They say nothing in life can truly prepare you for the arrival of a child. All jokes aside, though, it is true that becoming a parent is one of the most monumental events in any person's life. It changes you irrevocably. Your whole world is turned upside down and reshaped around your tiny new addition. Even if you have absolutely no interest in children whatsoever, you will still experience a part of yourself shift when you bring a child into your life. And all of this is without even mentioning the sleep deprivation. It is precisely this overwhelming feeling of dread mixed with excitement that Mary Shelley was aiming to capture when she wrote Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. Although it might seem a bit silly today, back in 1818, when the novel was first published, it was considered incredibly controversial and shocking. The idea of a scientist being able to create life was enough to terrify anyone, but really, it wasn't just the idea of creation that scared people so much. It was the idea of what would happen if someone had the power to create life. Mary Shelley, however, did not create her story out of thin air. And if we dig deep enough, we can find some very real horrors that inspired her iconic work. So, grab a shovel. Today we are going to unearth the dark origins of Frankenstein. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin was born in London on August 30th, 1797, shortly before the French Revolution. Her father, William Godwin, was a well-known political philosopher, and her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, was a writer and advocate for women's rights. Unfortunately, Mary's mother died just 11 days after giving birth to her, and as a result, Mary was raised primarily by her father. Her early childhood was filled with books, intellectual discussions, and a strong sense of feminist ideals. When Mary was only 16 years old, her father began courting a woman named Maria G. She was an American anarchist and political activist who traveled to Europe in order to protest against slavery and promote democracy. In typical Godwin fashion, he introduced Mary to Maria Farnsworth, and the two women became close despite their age gap. Eventually, William Godwin married Maria Farnsworth, making her his second wife, and thus making Mary his stepdaughter. Despite the unconventional circumstances, the three of them lived together as a family until Mary's death in 1851. In 1814, at the age of 17, Mary fell in love with a young man named Percy Bysshe Shelley. He was a poet and the son of a wealthy family, but Percy's father cut him off financially after he married Mary because she was both his daughter and his step-granddaughter. This meant that Mary and Percy had to live separately from her father for a time. Although they were still on good terms, the couple moved in with a group of intellectuals and artists, and it was here that they began to develop their ideas about politics, philosophy, and literature. One day, the group decided to split up, and each member went their separate ways. Percy and Mary, along with a female friend named Jane Clairmont, decided to travel to Switzerland. While staying at a villa in the Swiss town of Chamonix, the three friends decided to hold a sort of ghost story writing competition. Each person would write the scariest story they possibly could, and then they would read them aloud to each other around a fire. Mary, however, struggled to come up with the story. She was already a published author at this point, having written a novella titled Valperga, or The Life and Death of a Witch, and she simply could not think of anything that would be scary enough to top her previous work. That was when she had what she later described as a sonne vie. As she drifted off to sleep one night, she saw a pale student of advanced science standing over the bed of a deceased body. The student was attempting to infuse life into the corpse using galvanism, which was a popular pseudoscience at the time that claimed that the human body could be reanimated through the use of electricity. Mary immediately sat up in bed and frantically began writing down her dream, which eventually evolved into her first and most famous novel, Frankenstein. Upon returning home to London, Mary began work on the novel in earnest. She worked in secret, hiding the manuscript from her husband, Percy, who was already established as a successful poet and critic. When she finally showed him her work, he encouraged her to publish it under a pseudonym. Since women were generally not taken seriously in the literary world at the time, Mary ultimately decided to publish it under her name, though. And the book was released anonymously in 1818. It was an immediate success, and critics praised Mary for her originality and powerful prose. Mary and Percy were ecstatic about the book's success, and they set to work on a second edition. However, in 1822, tragedy struck when Percy drowned in a boating accident. Devastated by the loss of her husband and soulmate, Mary retreated to Italy with her half-sister Claire and a friend. There she met an Italian patriot named Pietro Alassio, who became her lover and eventual second husband. They returned to England together in 1829. Over the next few decades, Mary continued to write novels, short stories, and essays, but none of them were as successful as Frankenstein. She became increasingly reclusive and withdrawn, and spent most of her time taking care of her ailing father. He died in 1836, and Mary never remarried after his passing. She suffered from a series of health problems in her later years, including several miscarriages and the deaths of several of her children. She died on February 1, 1851, at the age of 53. Although Frankenstein was not based on any real events, there were several real-world inspirations for this story. Let's take a look at a few of them. Animal magnetism. As we mentioned earlier, galvanism was a popular pseudoscience at the time that claimed the human body could be reanimated through the use of electricity. Although this theory was disproven, it nonetheless captured the imaginations of many scientists and writers. One of these people was a Scottish surgeon named John Hunter. In 1798, he delivered a lecture to the Royal Society of Edinburgh titled Observations on the Conduction of the Animal Electric Spark. During his lecture, he demonstrated how he had been able to reanimate the heart of a recently deceased cat by shocking it with electricity. This demonstration led many to believe that it was possible to use galvanism to reanimate the bodies of humans. Mary Shelley was well aware of Hunter's work, and she used it as inspiration for the reanimation process in Frankenstein. The Strange Case of Baron Munch. Although galvanism was a popular theory at the time, Mary Shelley knew that it would not truly explain the creation of life. To get around this, she took inspiration from a real-life con man named Baron Munch. He had gained notoriety for claiming that he had discovered a way to artificially create food, which he demonstrated by creating cheese from milk and wheat. Using this as a basis, Mary imagined a scientist who could create life by combining various organic materials, the last man. In addition to these scientific influences, Mary Shelley was also inspired by the philosophical ideas of her father, William Godwin. In his 1793 book, An Inquiry Concerning the Original of Our Ideas, he theorized that humans are born without any innate ideas, and that all knowledge comes from experience. Mary applied this idea to the novel by creating a monster that is born without any understanding of the world around it. As the creature experiences the world, it learns from its interactions with other humans and begins to develop emotions and desires. Through the creature's perspective, Mary explores themes of isolation, prejudice, and the search for identity. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein has become one of the most enduring horror stories of all time. Its themes of scientific hubris, the nature of good and evil, and the search for identity continue to resonate with readers today. Although the novel was inspired by real-world events and theories, it is ultimately a work of fiction. However, this does not make it any less powerful or relevant. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share for more historical horror. Until next time, stay safe and remember, horror is everywhere.